Venetian blinds are basically a whole lot of linear wipes all at once. I have some on my office window. They open like this. This transition should not be confused with l'ouvert. I'll get to that one later. Long story short, I think Venetian blinds are a lot more useful for animation rather than live action. I've seen tons of After Effects tutorials that use Venetian blinds in one way or another. But not a single tutorial I've ever seen tells you why you might want to use it as a transition. But I'll tell you my theory on it. So long as you're using enough blinds, it essentially works as a more complex alternative to a dissolve. And because it adds motion to a scene, I think it works best on things that already have little to no motion of their own. And it creates so much motion all over the screen simultaneously that unlike a single linear wipe, your eye is not pushed around. Captain Disillusion uses the Venetian blinds a lot, and he's got lots of variety, including a rolling effect that I don't know how to do. Does he make them all custom, or is this a plugin? I have no idea. So I asked him, and he told me. It's a narrow rectangle shape plus repeater with animation on the scale's X parameter, which creates the cascade. That's very clever. I would not have thought of that. So he does do it custom every time in After Effects. Now, let me teach you how not to use the Venetian blinds with the following negative example. And here it is. It's simply dreadful. First of all, these bands are much too large. There are only 2 of them. This means that the transition starts with this bizarre slice of video in the middle of the frame, so that's where the viewer will start looking, even though there's nothing to see there except for this guy's butt. And then we get a full quarter of the way through the transition before we even begin to see the second band, which appears at the top of the screen, which attracts the viewer's eye to look up there. But there's also not really anything to see up there, so the viewer feels a bit betrayed and confused. This transition is also far too slow, which only gives the audience more time to be distracted by it. Worst of all, both shots are handheld, making them shaky. Each shot by itself looks fine, but when we're forced to look at both at the same time, in addition to the movement of the transition itself, the result is almost nauseating. Ugh. Furthermore, the first shot is a dolly out shot, while the second shot is a sideways tracking shot. And the direction of the Venetian blinds doesn't match up with either of them. So you've got 5 different types of motion going on during a single transition. It's maddening. So I'm going to try to fix this. Let's turn this negative example into a positive example. This is a new teaching method I'm trying. I think it's going to be great. So I tried several things like speeding it up, increasing the number of bands, and matching the direction of motion. This version is better, but it's actually too fast. Both clips are in slow motion, so the transition between them should also be slower than usual. Remember, that's a pretty decent rule of thumb. So I tried making the transition slower, reversed the direction to match the motion of the second shot, and used even more bands. It's still not great. I also tried this 45-degree version with extremely eased motion on the transition completion parameter. It's also not great. Then I tried transitioning between 2 shots that are both tracking in the same direction. First with faster and smaller bands, then again with larger, slower, eased bands. This one is my favorite so far, because it kind of matches the way he pushes off the ground here, but I still think all these examples look pretty stupid. Maybe if I use skateboarding footage where the camera is not moving, it'll work better? Here's my first attempt at that, which is actually pretty boring. I'm gonna tighten that up. Okay, that's better. I quite like this 45-degree transition from this shot to this shot. It was actually an accident that I stumbled into while experimenting, but I liked it, so I kept it that way. I actually think the lack of camera motion in these shots makes them a lot less interesting after all. Skateboarding is about movement, so it's no wonder that most skateboarding videos are shot with the camera also in motion. So I'm gonna zoom and keyframe all these clips and make the editing even tighter. Now that's definitely the best so far. Did you notice how I maintained more careful control over where the viewer's eye is looking? And how the motion and direction of the transitions aid with that? I didn't think it was possible, but I made the Venetian blinds work for this. You may also have noticed the subtle effect here on the skater just before the final transition. That was also an accident that I liked, so I kept it in after some modification. It's achieved by duplicating the layer, offsetting it, and adding another transition on top. There's a lot more I could do to make a skater video more exciting to watch. I could do more speed ramps, add sound effects and visual effects, get better music, and of course, not use the Venetian blinds for every single transition, but it was an interesting challenge to find a way to make that work. Now, I watched several skateboarding videos just to find some wild transitions, and I couldn't. This is as close as I got, right here. It's just the intro. All the skateboarding videos I found mostly just used straight cuts between shots. Nothing fancy. And that's probably because people are here to see cool skateboarding tricks, not cool editing tricks. Sometimes less is more. My little skate video needed fancier editing, because the skateboarding tricks being done were a lot more simple. Anyway, let's talk about where you can actually find the Venetian blinds transition. As usual, Premiere's stock version of this is not nearly customizable enough, although you actually can choose the number of bands with this bizarre text box. Interestingly, I found out while writing this video that Premiere does have a better Venetian blinds transition effect hidden in the obsolete folder. And it's far more customizable than the non-obsolete transition. You've got direction, width, and feather options, and the feather is actually good. It's curved instead of linear. Adobe, this is not obsolete. Your replacement for it is worse, not better. Maxon Universe does not have one. Boris FX Continuum kind of has one, the multi-stripe wipe, but you have to load the correct .bsp to get it to work. And all of these parameters are super weird. It's clearly designed for some other purpose. Film Impact's Venetian blinds are hiding inside of the linear wipe. All you have to do is increase the number of repeats. As already discussed, this transition has just about all of the excellent customization options you'll ever need. Combine repeats with mirror, and the Venetian blinds will grow from the center instead of the edge of each blind. And they even have the stroke on both sides. That's great. Also, you've got glow and shadow. Separate from the feather control, there's another control for the softness of the unmoving part of the Venetian blind edge, but it scales with the transition completion, which I don't actually like. So I'm not sure what this is for. If you don't like that, just use the mirror trick and it'll use the feather parameter on both edges. The only thing you don't have in here is the wave or cascade that I've seen elsewhere. You just watched one chapter from a longer transitions tutorial, which you can also watch right now for free from the link below, or just click this little thingy on screen right now. The tutorial covers nearly every useful transition and every transitions vendor. I'll see you there.